Welcome in. It's the Basketball by Association Midweek Munchdown. It's your BbA Byte. Glad to have you aboard. Arky is me. That is Joel C. Cordes. Joel, hello.
Hey, it almost sounded like you were going to break into song there, but
I might.
But I mean, you have before. I wouldn't put it past you.
I'll do it again.
That wasn't a dare, but
I've been listening to some Brooks and Dunn's recently. I can do it.
All right.
If
that
you
actually
lose
did
your
sound
one
like
and only.
Heaven help us.
Oh, okay. There's always room here for the lonely. Okay. So Joel, I'm gonna welcome you to the podcast, and then playing games. Eastern Conference went exactly like we predicted, Joel. Huh? Perfect, easy, super easy picks by us. I don't even know why we're recording today.
I am trying to figure out how I want to eat all this crow that I now have in front of me. Do I steam it? Do I grill it? Do I put it on a sandwich, a soup, make it into a crow smoothie? I don't even know. Yeah, those first two games, we couldn't have been more wrong, could we? Especially me.
Well, let's relax on some of that crow. Part of that crow is about to get run by Brooklyn, so I'll just put that out there.
Well, fair enough. I mean,
okay, so let's start with the headline, which was the Boston Celtics, and more notably, Jayson Tatum going hard against the Washington Wizards, as they are now your 7th seed. They're going to take on Brooklyn. Washington still in it, but we got to figure out what happens. They got to play the math of the winner of Indiana. That's the math. Okay, so
I do.
We'll get to that in just a quick second. But thoughts on Jayson Tatum for the third time this season having a 50-plus game?
Well, huge respect has to go out to him. Because not only was it the 50 points on the offensive end, but if you watch closely, Tatum did a very credible job defensively during the times that he got matched up against Beal and against Westbrook. They put the longer arm Tatum on Westbrook, which I thought was going to be a disaster, and he held his own. Like, he wasn't the sole defender in those cases, but they rotated him on. He had stretches against them, and it is no small feat to be a part of that defensive scheme, to hold Beal and Westbrook down like they did and to score 50 points. Like, that's huge. There's a lot of credit to go around here. Like, Kemba Walker, who you and I have had our doubts about all year, had a very good game again on both ends of the floor. Yeah. Not only did he hit some big shots, but he drew some big charges. He, again, was credible. He held up his end against either Beal or Westbrook when he was playing, and there was a lot of help behind him. That's true. But he was part of the game plan and did a really nice job with that. Boston looked absolutely dead in the water over the last couple weeks. And we thought that especially without Jaylen Brown, they were going to be overmatched. And it did take 50 points from Jayson Tatum. Like, let's not lie about that. There was a couple points in that game where it felt like Washington was going to make a run and the Celtics were going to slip away on this, right? But Tatum carried them.
Yeah, especially that second quarter. That second quarter was where Washington looked like they had starting to get their feet back under them, and that Beal and Westbrook both have sort of figured out Boston to a degree, but Boston with a tremendous third quarter offensively and defensively. And let's start with Jayson Tatum, because 50 points is a lot of points, but if we go based on Jayson Tatum's average, that's still like 25 points above what he normally averages, and they won by 18. So it did take a tremendous effort from Jayson Tatum for Boston to get this win. But you look on the other side for the Wizards, Beal and Westbrook combined for 42 points, and that's respectable. But that's not 80, and they have no help behind them. If those two don't go off, that team's not going to be playing in the playoffs much longer.
No, and 3 for 21 from downtown is a death sentence anytime, every time. And Washington has not shot the three ball well all year, but they put up so many of them that usually that's been okay. Nobody was hitting last night. And you look at Westbrook's line, 20 points, 14 rebounds. You go, oh, well, that's fine. But then 6 of 18 from the floor, 0 of 4 from downtown. Many of his points came off of offensive rebounds and putbacks. He just wasn't really in the flow. Brad Beal, 10 of 25 for those 22 points. He did have 9 boards as well, 6 assists. And both of those guys were minus 19 and minus 20 in plus minus respectively. So they not only were struggling on the offensive end, but they were getting scored on when they were out there. And like you said, Arky, nobody outside of Ish Smith really had an impactful game. And Smith wound up playing 26 minutes, had 17 points, and shot the ball well. Daniel Gafford had 12 points off the bench, but I would characterize those as nondescript. Like he got some points in there, but they didn't really change or mean much. Hachimura was really quiet, only played 17 minutes. He was in some foul trouble, and Raul Neto 0 of 2, 0 points. It's somebody else has to make shots, and I'm going to point the finger here at Davis Bertans. You're going to go 0 for 7 from downtown and be a sniper, 1 for 8 from the field. In 33 minutes, he was a minus 23. That alone might be a death sentence if it happens again, regardless of what Beal and Westbrook do.
I do want to throw some respect out again to Jayson Tatum one more time, because he did that 50 without hitting 10 or 12 threes, right? Mm-hmm. Like he did a yeoman's effort. I think he only had 5 threes in the game.
17 of 17 at the free throw line, right?
But what I was going to mention is that he saw Washington got into a little bit of foul trouble, and then he attacked. Mm-hmm. And then that's the smart thing that sort of makes up a leader on a team like this, is that like you see a wounded gazelle out there, you go after it and put it out of its misery. And that's sort of what Jayson Tatum was able to do. He attacked that team, and that team that wasn't Washington was not hitting at all early. And it sucked because someone had the over 232.5. Pew. But it was such a sort of, it's something we have seen from Boston and Jayson Tatum. It's something we've also seen a lot of times absence from Jayson Tatum and Boston this season. And as much respect as I will give that, and it deserves, because it's playoff, it's win or go home, or it's win. I mean, it's win or possibly go home again.
Yeah, for those two.
Right. That it's one game and you could be out again. Scenario, Boston does come up. The one thing I did not expect, besides the 50 points from Tatum, though, was nearly 30 from Kemba Walker. That guy delivered, and you could tell he was in a zone. He wanted it last night, and I'm not sure we're gonna get another near 30-point effort from Kemba Walker, but the one puts you out as far as you needed to be, and it's a good effort from Kemba.
Well, and what's crazy about all this, and it is a testament to both their defense and how poorly Washington shot the ball. You look up and down the rest of the box score, and if you erase the 50 points and the 29 points, and you say, oh, well, if those guys had like 2/3 of that or closer to their regular averages, Boston would have been dead, right? Marcus Smart and Evan Fournier shot the ball like trash last night. 7 points for Smart, 8 for Fournier. They both only hit three shots and were at 8-11 apiece in attempts. But those guys were plus 23 and plus 20 respectively. Like they were able to get stops. They had productive minutes when they were out there. And what's been Boston's problem all year? It's been their bench, right? Especially when one of the key bench guys has had to step up into the starting lineup. That was Fournier last night with no Jaylen Brown. And you're looking like, all right, Tristan Thompson, 30 minutes, had 12 points, 12 boards. That's a nice contribution. But nobody else from that bench had more than one basket. Like that usually has been a death sentence for Boston, and it wasn't. Robert Williams, got dinged up. You could tell he wasn't healthy, and then had the ankle roll or whatever happened in there too, which was just minutes after Smart looked like he got hurt seriously and then bounced back. But Robert Williams was 4 points, 4 boards. Like that had all the ingredients without Tatum and Walker and the rest of the guys who we will give credit to playing good defense. Without those points from those two, Washington still could have won that game despite shooting the ball again like a dumpster.
Yeah, and we'll wrap up then with this. It's just it was a compelling game to think about, and what we could have sort of seen on the court. And I guess probably into the third quarter, early fourth, is when you're like, I don't know, Washington's got the muster to be able to pull this back.
It was a fun one to watch. It was,
for the majority of it. Yeah, for the majority of it, it was entertaining. You can sort of see why we're talking about a 7 versus 8, right? Like we're talking about like two teams who were like battling for the bottom of the conference, that there are a lot of holes there why the winner, their big reward is the 7th seed and the Brooklyn Nets on the other side of that. So, congratulations, Boston. You are in 4 more games, and you get to host 2. That's cool. So
shock the world, right? Anything is possible.
Why not?
That's not probable.
Well, I mean, there is a chance that everyone could tear an ACL. By the way, real quick, I don't think Bradley Beal looked completely healthy last night. I think
he absolutely did not. No.
Yeah, it was. We'll see when they take on Indiana. Speaking of Indiana, how about a game that was a sweet dud to start the whole play-in tournament? Not competitive from the very beginning, Joel, and not exactly sort of a way we were expecting it. Indiana puts up 144 points in a rout of Charlotte. Whoo, man. Especially after we got the news.
I had Charlotte.
You had to feel pretty good after
winning twice to get in as the 8th seed. They were my pick.
You had to feel pretty good after you heard the news earlier in the day that Karis LeVert was going to be out, and that dude was white hot this month. Like he's averaging.
I thought that was a gut punch. Yeah.
Yeah, I did too. He was averaging 25 points a game for the month of May, and he was just on fire. And he's out to the COVID-19 protocols. You thought that might be the death blow for Indiana, and as soon as they step on the court, they're just blowing the wheels off of Charlotte. It was wild. It really, really was wild what Indiana was able to do, especially a team, Joe, we've talked about that's been disjointed, murdered with injuries, and doesn't like their coach. Like to have this much vim, vigor, and fight in them to play this well from the very beginning. I was very surprised by that.
I was, and I will say this, the first quarter was actually very entertaining because Indiana was just, I mean, they were all over the place. They were flying at the ball. You knew the Hornets were in trouble. Yeah, you knew the Hornets were in trouble, and you thought, okay, maybe they just need to get their teeth knocked in here for the first half, and they'll come back out, and you know, that youthful inexperience it'll be in the past after halftime. They'll come back, they'll give a bigger fight. They did not. Like, Charlotte played as if this was a regular season game, and when they saw that they were getting their butts kicked, they're like, we'll have another one. Yeah. You know, they just did not. And it's not just like they played like a bunch of young guys, which they absolutely are. They played like a bunch of little kids, right? They were just absolutely incapable of executing on the defensive end last night. The amount of blow-bys, the amount of cuts, the amount of inbounds plays that turned
it was insane. It was insane. They allowed 8 guys to score at least a dozen points. 8!
Right. And that brings up a great point too. It's not as if, you know, when the game first started, you're like, oh my goodness, Doug McDermott can't miss. Like, he's going to go for 40 points, but he didn't. And Sabonis didn't even shoot the ball well because apparently he must have insulted all of the referees' mothers before the game or something. That guy was getting hacked all over the floor every time he touched the ball in the first half, and they did nothing. So it's not like he had a monster game scoring wise, but every single person that the Pacers put in seemed like they were getting whatever they wanted. Like, TJ McConnell is running around doing TJ McConnell things and, you know, getting steals and pushing the tempo. And O'Shea Brissett, who's a guy that they pulled up, you know, mid-season here, like he's literally a mid-season call-up, 23 points, and he was phenomenal as a backdoor cutter, like cutting baseline and Sabonis finding him, or Malcolm Brogdon, who I'll get to in a minute, being able to find him. Like, they were just on, and it showed. Like, not only did Indiana play a phenomenal game team-wise, but that's how bad the Hornets were. They couldn't stop anyone. It's not as if somebody just had a good game, you know, a Jayson Tatum 50-pointer, and you go, well, that was his night. Like, it was everybody's night in a Pacers uniform.
And there was so much in that, and the matchup is sort of indicative, too, as how this was able to happen, but not necessarily. Like, if this team was able to be fully healthy, and they were a little bit more so last night, but still not fully healthy. Like, this is why people thought Indiana could be a home playoff team, possibly this season.
When healthy, yeah.
Yeah, because they have the type of dudes that are able to make that run. I mean, they've been in the playoffs like, what, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight years, it feels like. They've been swept like 4-0 in all the first rounds, but they've been a consistent playoff team. You know they were supposed to be good when healthy. It's just last night was. Whew, I mean, we've seen that team give up 150 points in a game. Like what? Like bizarre to me that they were that efficient in a game that means something, a lot of something.
The return of Malcolm Brogdon was huge because even though he doesn't score typically as much as Karis LeVert does, Brogdon and Sabonis are really similar in that they are classic right decision guys. Like, they're capable of scoring, sure, but they don't seem to have any hesitation about just making the right pass, collapsing the defense, doing whatever they have to do to set up the right shot. And even though neither of them are flashy, like offensively and defensively, those two are phenomenally smart. And it hasn't always been enough, but last night it was. And Brogdon only played 21 minutes, but he was plus 18 in that time and scored 16 points. And for a guy coming off a fairly serious injury, he had 8 assists as well. I thought he really gave them a huge boost, and it allowed McConnell to go back to the bench and play against second-line Hornets guys who were just not ready for McConnell's intensity. Like, they did not match it whatsoever. And to me, TJ McConnell is a classic, like, J.R. Smith, Nick Young type of guy. He's an icing on the cake guy because he's going to make some mistakes. There's going to be some like boneheaded plays in there sometimes where he's just a little bit too aggressive, either on foul trouble or he pushes the paint, pushes the pace and takes off and gets caught up in the air. Or even last night, you saw him like brick a layup at point blank range. You're going to have some head scratching stuff with him, but he's also, I think, one of the most impactful backup point guards in the league because of all the good stuff he brings to the table, like those aforementioned guys, where he just gives you a spark when he's in the game. Like, the tempo all of a sudden picks up. He's push. He's a dog on defense, which is great. He can get beat on defense because he's not all that big, but he'll make plays. And you saw him get into passing lanes, and all of a sudden the Pacers went from a little bit slower with Brogdon, a little more methodical, but they were making the right reads and they were finding the open shooters. And McConnell comes in against the second unit, and nobody from Charlotte wanted a piece of him playing up at that tempo like they were. And honestly, like, this is the sign of youth. Charlotte looks like one of those classic too young, too fast teams where they played a nice beginning of the season, and when things tightened up, they lost 6 in a row to end the year, 5 in a row, whatever it was, and they weren't ready when stuff got tight. Honestly, the only guy last night who didn't look like he was in over his head was Cody Zeller, right? He was 7 of 7 from the floor, 17 points, and he looked like he had been in a playoff game before. And you are in big, big trouble if that statement is true, right? If Cody Zeller is the only one who's playing well, you are in big trouble. And Charlotte was, but you take your lumps and better luck next year. They've got a bright future ahead of them.
Indiana 74 points in the paint.
Yeah.
74 points in the paint last night. Okay, so that sets us up for what do you think now of our new matchup for the 8th seed? Because I don't know if these two games just sort of change your opinion on Indiana or Washington, but who takes the 8th seed now?
It's really hard.
It is really like the games really have marred like what I thought these two teams could be, because I really thought Indiana was sort of limping into this, didn't care about the coach, which is like, let's just
and the hard part is both of these teams have done this before, right? Put on some really good games and then a stinker the next night.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Boston, and it's not only because I just happen to randomly be wearing a Celtics shirt today. I do think it's sustainable for Tatum to play that well again. I'm not sure that Indiana can get 74 points in the paint.
Do you mean Washington?
Boston. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Well, yeah, sorry. I'm thinking Celtics Pacers, and it should be Wizards Pacers. Ugh. All right, so looking at Wizards Pacers. See, this is what the play-in tournament does to you in the first time.
It makes you think a lot more about the tournament. Like at the beginning, you're like,
so that's too much thinking.
So who's eliminated? Is anybody eliminated? Am I eliminated?
Didn't Washington beat Indiana like 3-0 during the regular season?
Ooh, I had to look up that series.
I'm pretty sure they did, and I'm pretty sure Westbrook they said this on TNT last night. Westbrook averaged something insane, like 30 and 20 against the Pacers during those 3 games. Now, granted, Brogdon will be back, but I'll go Washington with this. Part of what I was going to say with the Pacers was I don't think they can get 74 points in the paint on somebody again like they did and shoot 46% from downtown on 16 makes like they did. Like, it was just a great night. I don't think they necessarily can do it. It should be a close game. But yeah, I'll take Washington because of the Westbrook and Beal factor. I don't think they can have as lackluster of a game 2 games in a row. And that's what I'll hang my hat on. And yeah, Boston goes on to play Brooklyn, and now my head's on straight.
Yeah, Washington won 3-0 during the season. Westbrook averaged 27, 18 in and in 20. Is that right? Is that right?
That sounds right. That sounds like what they said on the broadcast last night.
Washington won on just like a week and a half ago, 154 to 141. I remember that. Golly.
Yeah, and a dinged up Malcolm Brogdon is gonna have some trouble. McConnell, for all the good things I said about him before, is not like a Russell Westbrook stopper. He's just not. He's going to be in over his head. So you're looking at Justin Holiday and Brogdon having to do a lot of the heavy lifting there, and maybe some more Aaron Holiday minutes too. But it's going to be tough.
So they played on May 3rd, 154-141, Washington, when Westbrook goes nuts. Bradley Beal, 5 days later, they beat Indiana 133-132 in overtime. Bradley Beal went for 50 in that game. Mm-hmm. Sweet. And Domantas Sabonis averaged a sweet 32, 14, and 9.
He seems to usually be okay no matter what the final score is. He's got his numbers.
I'm feeling comfortable that there's going to be a lot of points in this game, don't you?
I do. Yep. And again, if Washington has a better go of it, because Indiana is not the defensive team that Boston is, at least not normally. There again, in a shootout type of game, I like the Wizards. I like their stars.
Jeez, man. See, I just look 238.5. That's a ton. That's a ton to put on the total. I've only seen like 1 or 2 higher this year. That is a ton of points to put on a total. For me, yeah. Man, I don't. I'm just gonna stick with Washington. I'm just gonna stick with them because the thing that makes me hesitant is not because of what they can do, because the matchups have shown they'll score a bunch of points in each other. They can beat Indiana, blah blah blah. It makes me worry about Bradley Beal and that hamstring, man. Yeah. I do think that that's more of a deal than just what the spread is or the total is. I think he's probably like 80% right now, probably top end. And if he's not close or closer to 100%, Indiana's going to eat him alive, I think. I think Indiana's got to change because that Wizards defense is not that great. And Russell Westbrook gets those assists. You know where the assists come from? Other people making the ball.
Right.
Other people.
Davis Bertans has to hit a shot. Just flat out has to hit anything.
So I got a little scared off in this play-in game by watching. A little scared off. But I'll stick with them one more time. But don't let me down. All right, Joel. I think that's going to do it for your BbA Byte. Tonight's games, we've already picked them. We're going to be perfect still tonight. So
we're taking. Well, I took Golden State over LA. You took the Lakers, and then I think we both took the Grizzlies over the Spurs.
Yeah, as the Spurs were just like, just go to sleep already.
Yeah, they'll come out and win by 25 just to prove our predictions wrong.
They've done it. They have done it this year. It's what's so hard about these NBA playoffs. All of these teams have beaten good teams by like 30 at some point this year. Mm-hmm. All right, Joel, say goodbye to the good people.
Goodbye, good people. And of course, if you are listening on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, and you want the video version, please come on over to YouTube. Check us out. Please subscribe, share, hit the bell, whatever you got to do. We would really, really appreciate that. And if you're on the YouTube channel, you can find the audio version at all of those aforementioned places, wherever you get your podcasts.
Go Knicks.